Hello. We get asked quite a lot about how to create batch files through the command line prompt for Portara, especially when it comes to dealing with creating Tenors based data. So this video is going to show you how to do that and what the nuances are. So the first thing you'll notice is this batch file up here, and literally you can create a batch file very simply by just any text file. There's a new text document, and just by changing the extension to BAT gives you the batch file. So that's how you do that, and now it becomes a batch file. And to edit the batch file rather than move it back to TXT, just simply right click and say edit, and then that file will open and you can write your text and do what you need in there. Okay, so we won't use that one. We're going to just get rid of that completely and look at the one that I've set up here called portara.bat, and right click and open that file. Now the way to approach creating batch files is to get the batch file working first in isolation and then hook it up into Portara as a second step. So let's take a look inside any generic batch file for Portara. The first bit is to allow you to escape if you double click by accident, so leave that in. This part of the syntax just points to Portara itself, so that is necessary in each and every case. And the bits that you will be thinking about is these end pieces here, which I'm going to talk through what they mean. So in Portara, as you should know, it's always a two-step process. You run the role manager first and then the compression manager, and it's the same with the batch file. You can see here that I'm going to be running the role manager followed by the compression manager in a couple of forms, the intraday and the daily, and then I'm going to run the role manager again and then follow that up with the compression manager to run continuous data. So tenors are in Portara is the individual files, so we're going to roll some individual files and compress them with the intraday compression manager followed by the daily, and then we're going to roll again and then compress. We're using the intraday compression manager into continuous data, all in the one batch of commands here. There are 3 commands for the Portara batch file. There's roll, which you can see here. There is compress intraday and also compress daily. Now optionally you can then have a template set at the end of each of those commands. As you can see here, there's a colon and my tenors, or as you can see there, a colon and my continuous. And you can also have optionally, again in the case of the intraday compression manager, which is not set in this case, as a semicolon followed by my session times. So you can choose to have a template with your session times in if that's going to suit your particular style. One final observation in the syntax is in the role manager. As you can see with this here, this is role. It's just going to use the last template set or any other template that you may wish to use, and this will roll based on the continuous data in that situation. Now a lot of you want to roll based with tenors, and there is a special way of doing that. If you just put roll and then colon tenors, that's the way in which you approach the role manager in tenors mode. So just remember that. So the approach is get Portara working properly first, then think about setting up your batch file. Once the batch file works in isolation, then hook that up to Portara. So we're going to open the role manager, and remember we haven't got a template set in the role manager for continuous data, but we still need to set up our even though we've got the special template for tenors, we do need to go in there and actually tell it what it should be reading. So it's going to remember the last state, the stickiness of this template to go forward with. So whatever you set in here, roll colon tenors is going to run that. So you notice I've just got the two top symbols set, daily and intraday. I'm out to 2040 to pick up the contracts that are further forward than nearest future, and I've just gone from 2020 there. So that's ready to run. So that's the role manager set. I'll close that. So we'll look at the compression managers. Start off with the daily, and you can see there it's blue, so it's in continuous mode. If you want it in tenors mode, it'll go green. So you need to set this up the way you wish it to run. And in our batch file, if we open that up again, we can see there that I've already done this, so I'm going to show you how I did it. So we're going to compress daily. So the daily it's called my tenors. So let me show you how I did that. I just moved it into tenors mode, set them to whatever I want them to run at, and right click here and then type in a name, which I did. I've already done one as my tenors. When you've done that, you just save, and then that will appear in the box down there, and then of course the batch file will know what to grab when it runs. So the template name in this case is my tenors, and that's all you do. So you do even though there's no compressed daily on the continuous data mode there, you can do it in exactly the same way. Then go on to the compression manager, the intraday one, and that works in exactly the same way. Click into intraday. So we've got one called my continuous here, which I set up prior. So I've got everything ready the way I want it. Right click, type in my continuous in here, and the one I've already set is there, my continuous. That's ready to go, and then move it into, in this case, because we want to compress tenors, I've also created a my tenors template in the intraday compression manager, so we can get to that. Let's just, because it already exists, I can go down here to it, my tenors, and if I click on that and say apply, you can see that that's what it looks like, but it exists as a template in there, and that's all ready to go too. Okay, so a couple of what not to do. So the first one is Portara must be closed in order for the batch file to run. If you try to, I'm just double clicking that, it's opened off screen, and if you have Portara open, of course it won't do anything, and then it will just close, so just be aware of that. Okay, so I've moved to another monitor. I'm going to double click the batch file, and we get the countdown clock, and then it will tell us it's about to open the role manager in special tenors mode, and it will do that. I'm just going to move that out the way so you can see, and Portara will open, and there's the role manager. Now notice it doesn't show you the tenors box, it just runs, it's run so quick in tenors mode, it doesn't last very long. Now there's Portara closed, and the next command's just opened, and now it's going to compress the intraday, and notice it's in my tenors, so it's going to now apply the tenors template, which we can see in green, to the intraday compression manager like so, and that job is done, and Portara will then close. In this case, the next command now is compress the my tenors template with the daily compression manager, and this is how it goes. It'll just keep executing the commands as it sees them. I'm just going to move that out the way for you there, and there's the daily tenors compression template being run, and then that will switch off. And I think next was it's just the generic role template for are continuous data extractions. And it's now, you can see it's in continuous data mode, and there it is, writing them all, in this case bean oil and the British pound, on the template, and it will close again in a second. And then the final template will be to create the continuous data extractions in the intraday compression manager. I'll move that out the way, and we can see this time it's in blue mode. Now it runs through, and then I do believe that's it. It will switch off and the batch file closes. The final thing we need to do is to hook the batch file up now with Portara. But before we do that, I just want to show you one thing in the role manager which people do tend to forget. In order for the tenors to operate, make sure that you have actually selected things on here for Portara to interact with, otherwise it will appear that it hasn't done anything, so just be aware of that. So in order to hook Portara up, go into Update Manager and then go to Tools, and you can see here this Auto Updates API. So if we open that, now something to be careful with, you may have come into creating batch files after experimenting around with this, so yours may look like this and not clear like it was when I opened it. So the thing to know with batch files is, without the batch file, this is going to call the role manager, compression manager, and then again the daily compression manager. So if you're using a batch file, you need to get rid of all these particular check marks and have them blank, otherwise it's going to do it twice for you. It's going to do the built-in role manager and compression manager runs, but we just want to point to the executable. In our case, I believe it's on the desktop. So if we click into there and we pick out, this case is Portara BAT, and we say there, you'll see now that the that this particular auto update API for all zones at the end is pointing to the batch file. So what this means is when Portara runs automatically via the automatic update monitor, which I've just opened from the system tray, you can see it's due to run at around about 5:45 Central Time. Now when that does run, it's going to open Portara and it's going to update the data behind the scenes, and then it's going to look in here for what to do. It's going to say, look, we don't need to do anything here because they're going to run a batch file, and the batch file is located here, so it will then run the batch file, and of course we know it works because we've double clicked and tested it, and Portara will then work for you in the way that you need it to. And finally, just to note that Portara batch file usage is an advanced feature in Portara, and you can find out more information from the interactive help by going here and looking into batch files using the command line with batch files, and this is going to explain the basics and how to avoid batch file use completely, or if you do need to go there and use a batch file, what the syntaxes are and how to put everything into perspective for you. And then again, you can go to the tutorial section, and along with this video there's another older video which you can watch, which will explain batch files more to you as well, how to create and run a batch file. Okay, so thank you very much.